I recently had a moment where I realized that I physically cannot give 100% to every aspect of my life. And I kept trying to do, I kept trying to do everything that was offered to me, every opportunity that came to me, because I felt like I couldn't pass anything up. But then I came to the conclusion that something was going to give. Welcome back to Find Your Power podcast. I am your host, Avery Jane. And in today's episode, I want to touch on how we glamorize being busy and how that's really not great. This isn't something that should be always glamorized. Multitasking should not be as normalized as it is. It doesn't need to be as normal. When you multitask, you are not able to give 100% of your energy to the things that you wish, the things that you want to, and you're going to be giving only a fraction of your energy to everything that you're working on. I'm also going to touch on how being overwhelmed feels so normal, and that's not really something that should be so normal nowadays. We don't need to constantly feel overwhelmed, and just because this is like glorified online and whatnot, it doesn't need to be the case. It's not a very sustainable idea to constantly be working, constantly be hustling, and have no break. Because without that mental break, you are not going to get much time to just have that recharge that you need, that mental recharge. I do also want to touch on kind of identifying your priorities in your life because that can also help in deciding your routine and your schedule. So, we are also going to touch on that today. But before we really dive in, I do want you to ask yourself, when was the last time that you actually did something like slowly and you were really mindful about what you were doing? Or if that question kind of seems very broad in general, think about the last time that you can remember sitting down to have a meal and just eating. Like, not working on an assignment if you're in college or a work assignment, or not scrolling on your phone. Now, don't get me wrong, I love to be an iPad kid and watch my Netflix shows while I'm eating dinner. But when it comes to multitasking every aspect of your life, that's when it becomes a problem. So, the truth of the matter is that our lives are too fast. And part of this has to do with productivity culture. Now, this is something that I touch on a lot already in a lot of my past episodes, so I'm not going to dive too deep into it today. But hustle culture, of course, is something that is glamorized nowadays, especially online. And so I think that's part of the reason why we are all trying to achieve that. This also goes along with the constant stimulation that we have offered to us. We don't have to just sit in silence if we don't want to. We have our phone that we can just pick up and start scrolling on TikTok or Instagram. We don't even have to sit in silence if we don't want to. And sometimes we really could use that. Sometimes we really need that. Multitasking is also another big thing, like I mentioned. This is a concept that is socially praised. We are rewarded for multitasking in a lot of scenarios, and it's really not that ideal of a situation because, yes, of course, in some cases it can be efficient. If what we're doing is, if one of the things that we're doing is like busy work, but if it's not, if the things that we need to do are things that we want to have good results, if you spend your mind and your energy on just one thing at a time, you're probably going to get a better product and a better result from doing it that way rather than doing it in a way that you spend double the time on two things, if that makes sense. Another part of this hustle culture is the fact that since we're seeing all of these constant videos of hustle culture, we're watching the get ready with me's on TikTok for my long day when I wake up at 5 a.m. and I grind, and I go, and I don't stop, and I do it every single day. We're watching those videos, and usually, I think most of the time in those videos, we see the person that is making them is somewhat successful in their lives. And so what happens is we start to associate this go, grind schedule of the hustle culture to being successful. And don't get me wrong, yes, of course, in some situations you can be successful. You can definitely be successful by doing this. You can, in a lot of situations, giving yourself this crazy, hectic, grind, go routine can actually contribute to your success. But if your success looks different from other people's, then the way that you achieve success may be different from other people as well. The truth is that if you are doing 5 things at once, you're not going to get the same product out of it as if you were just focusing on one of those things at a time. So, I challenge you to, if you are someone who likes to multitask very often, maybe instead of doing 3 things at once for an hour, try doing one of those things at a time, 20 minutes each. And you might find that you get the same almost the same product as you would doing it for an hour, or you might even get better results because you're able to really just put your mind to that one thing rather than having to fragment your mind in some kind of way and your attention. This also ties into why we struggle to be present because we're constantly thinking about the things that we have to do, and there's so much on our plate that we need to get done. Honestly, I could think of like 10 things right now that I need to get done or that I could definitely do, but that's not really helping me right now by thinking of all of those things. Because honestly, by me thinking about all of those things, that's just distracting me from what I'm doing right now, which is recording this episode. These are going to be things that I'm going to get done eventually because I know that they're important to me. So it's something that I can worry about when the time comes, and I don't need to think about it right now in this moment. But this can also contribute to why we feel like we don't have as much time in our lives to do what we want to do or to fit in everything in our schedule, because part of this has to do with finding our priorities and figuring out kind of what we prioritize, and those things need to be in our schedules, and the things that we don't care about as much we can get rid of. And what we try to do is most of the time we try to put everything in our schedule, whether it matters to us or it matters to how we look. And when we put everything and pile everything into our schedule, we're not going to be able to give as much of our energy and our time and our mind capacity towards each of those things. So, like I said in the beginning, I did have a situation or realization when recently, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, maybe. So, Thursdays are like my busy days of the week. A few Thursdays ago, I was driving to my next thing of the day, and I came to this realization in the car when I was driving. I realized that I couldn't give a percent of energy that I wanted to give to each aspect of my life and each aspect of my schedule and my routine because something was going to give. I already started to see that something give. And in my situation, that was my grades. That is something that is very important to me. I prioritize my assignments, my classes, and whatnot. So I could not let that slip. So I realized I needed to give something else. And I was able to find, when kind of going through my schedule and finding what I need to prioritize and what I don't really care about as much, I ended up finding something in my life that I was able to kind of cut the time in half. I didn't completely get rid of it because I didn't need to necessarily, but I went from doing it for 2 days a week to 1 day a week because it's something that I could manage. So by giving that 1 day up back to myself, I gave myself more time of freedom to honestly just have some rest time, have some catch up time, but also more study time to give to my grades and my assignments. And that's something that I needed in order for my grades to not fall. Luckily, I caught it in time also. It was only a few weeks into the semester at that point, but of course, I had to come to that realization earlier rather than later. And if I wouldn't have, then who knows where my grades would be now. So, the realization that I had to come to was basically that if my schedule's too full, something's going to suffer, right? But I realized that I wanted to be the one to choose what that thing suffering was going to be. I didn't want my schedule to kind of choose it for me. So now we're going to assess your priorities. And I want you to really think about these while I go through some categories. So, the first step in establishing your priorities and making a nice set schedule and routine for yourself is going to be identifying your non negotiables. When it comes to identifying your non negotiables, maybe is one of yours health related. So, this could include going to the gym, going for a run, whatever you may do throughout your weekly or daily routine that contributes to your health. That's something that you maybe want to keep in your routine. Another one is your career. Of course, this partly has to do with being able to make money, but also your growth as well, growing within your career. Maybe you want to grow within your career, so you're going to spend more time with it. And then relationships. Are there any relationships in your life that you definitely find non negotiable? Whether this is friends, family, whether you have a partner, especially if you do have kids as well. These are things that you want to include your time spent with these people or your attention spent with these people, your attention given to these people, because these are things that you definitely want in your daily or weekly routine and you are not going to get rid of and you're not going to let budge or give. Maybe growth is one of your non negotiables. This might include if you're in college, maybe taking classes, the classes that you're taking. Maybe this is growing within your job, like I mentioned before, or maybe this is just growing as a person, not related to career at all, learning a new language or reading books. Whatever this may be for you, is this maybe something that you put into your non negotiables in your daily routine or weekly routine? And lastly, rest. Rest is one that I hope we all have in our non negotiables list. And this does not just include sleeping. With sleeping, I'm hoping that if you are at least a woman in college, you should be getting 7 to 9 hours a night ish. I believe it's somewhere around there. I think that women need a little bit more, but I'm not exactly sure, and I'm not a doctor yet. Maybe one day, but sleep isn't going to be my specialty, anyways. If you are a man, then maybe that's a little less for you, but hey, if you're hitting that 6 to 9 hours, then props to you. Keep doing it. Anyways, rest does not just include these hours of sleep, it also includes this mental quietness that you need every day because you do need to let your mind kind of recharge. The thing is that as kids, we didn't really like quiet time. But as adults, we actually need quiet time. Our minds need some time to just be quiet and kind of just recharge and reset. And this doesn't really just mean being in your room, on your phone, or on your laptop. This means like sitting in silence for a few minutes, like just letting your mind wander. Now, step two of finding your non negotiables to set your routine, your ideal routine and schedule, is going to be to ask yourself if you had to remove 3 things this week, what would they be? Now, 3 things might sound like a lot, but like I mentioned for myself, I was able to find something that I could just kind of split in half the time. So if you just need to split things in half, that works as well for you. But whatever you need to do, kind of find things that you are able to take away and eliminate. Of course, be realistic. I would love to take away having to do the dishes from my routine, but unfortunately, that's not very realistic for me. So, taking away things that you don't really need, but you might not enjoy anymore either. And the step 3 is going to be ranking what actually matters to you long term. So, you can't prioritize everything, but when you think about your future self, I want you to kind of I want you to kind of think about the things that your future self would be happy that you're doing right now in your routine. Because these are the things that are really going to make your future self proud and you're going to thank yourself later for doing these things in your routine. And when you're thinking about these things, it's important to recognize what looks good to other people and what actually feels good to you in your life and in your routine, what actually moves your life forward, because that's what's going to matter the most when it comes to your future self and living the life that you want to live. So, now I want to talk about why we feel like we don't have time. The reason that we usually feel like we don't have any time is actually not because we don't have time. The thing is, it's not always that we don't have time, it's that we haven't decided where this time is going yet and the right places for this to go. So, the priorities that we mentioned just a minute ago are going to be the places that you want the most of your time to go, your non-negotiables maybe. So usually the reason we feel we don't have time is because we kind of have these poor boundaries set in place for determining the time that we spend in each area, as well as the things that we are doing that actually matter to us or not. So putting up boundaries for yourself is honestly a very good start. This is something I had to realize as well, because once you kind of put these boundaries in place, when you decide that doing something for an hour or two that you're only doing for someone else, really, and you're not doing for yourself, and it would put you back, maybe put that boundary up and say no to those plans. Another reason we might not feel we have time has to do with being a little bit disorganized in our scheduling. This can be solved by maybe a calendar. That's an idea. Also, overcommitting to things that we can't actually fit into our schedule. If we have a bunch of commitments back to back to back to back to back to back to you. I had to pull that out. Charlie XCX. Anyways, if we're overcommitting to too many activities, then this is going to be a problem. If we commit to too many plans, we're not going to be able to make all of them a lot of the times. And then we're going to feel like it's the time that we are losing rather than the fact that we just overcommitted ourselves. This kind of ties into not planning things realistically. It's the same concept. If you make plans that you underestimate the timing that they're going to take each time, or maybe something that I kind of do and I have to kind of try to fix for myself personally is making a plan of something and maybe leaving at the time that I plan to leave. Sometimes I keep staying longer and staying longer if I'm like with friends or something and I actually need to get stuff done after that. Or maybe it's also sometimes I don't give myself time for mental energy, which is the last biggest factor that comes with feeling like we don't have time, because when you don't account for your mental energy that you're going to have, that's when you struggle. For me, sometimes I try to make plans for after work or after a long day of school, and then it comes time for it, and I don't really count in the fact that my mind is not really ready for that anymore, and it's kind of just tired and it wants to chill. That's the part that can be a little complicated sometimes because we like to make plans when we're all excited, we're all energized, and then it comes time for the plans and we are not feeling the same way. That's why canceling is totally okay. I'm a big supporter of setting boundaries, even if that means flaking sometimes, because at the end of the day, you do need to prioritize your mental health and your own time. And I'm not saying make plans with a bunch of people and then just cancel all the time. Of course, be respectful of the other people's time as well. That's a big one. But if you really feel the need for your mental energy to cancel, a lot of times it's going to be more beneficial for you and for your friend to cancel, because you don't want to be like half asleep the whole time you guys are hanging out, because that's no fun for either of you. Finding practical and efficient time management is very important, especially if you are in college, because when you're out of college, like post college, that's when things get pretty real when it comes to time management. So, I'm going to kind of guide you on some tips that I'm hoping can help you organize your time management a little bit better. So, first, it might be beneficial to incorporate some time blocking. This this means like assigning tasks to specific times. I like to do this when it comes to classes already. In college, that's something that's already given to you, and that's something that you can kind of practice working on when you are in college, setting those specific times to go to class and then actually making the effort to do that and attend. And a calendar can really help with this. I honestly just use the Apple Calendar on my phone. I don't use it for everything. I know a lot of people do like to use the calendar to set their study time, set their nap time, set their lunch time, and their classes and all that in between. Personally, I just use it to have my class schedule and also if I have like doctor's appointments and whatnot, and also my work schedule. But if I have any plans for like a hangout, I'll put that on my calendar if it's like a long time in advance or it's maybe with friends I'm not as close with. But if it's something spontaneous, I'm not going to freak out if it's not on my calendar. So I don't put everything. I don't need to put the times that I eat or anything on there. But to each their own. I know some people like to do that. So if that helps you. Another one is trying to stop multitasking. Now, I don't know if it's very realistic to say that nothing should be multitasked, but definitely trying to practice only like single tasking, using your mind to do only one activity at a time. This might go a long way for you, honestly. Another tip could be to schedule some white space. What I mean by this is that not every hour needs to be productive. So sometimes you can just have a little mental break. Even 10 to 15-minute break occasionally throughout the day can be really beneficial for you. So, for me personally, I don't meditate, but if that's something that you want to do, then you should totally do it. I did have a meditation phase in my life. I believe it was in high school. I tried it for a few months, I think it was. I used the app Headspace, the one with the little orange icon, I think. But it worked for me. I'm not exactly sure why I stopped. I can't really remember, but it was something that I didn't really notice significant changes, but then again, I didn't write anything down that I noticed or anything. It was just something I was trying out. But if this is something that you want to try, I definitely give it a shot. If it's something you've tried already and it didn't work out, maybe try it again. I don't know. It could work for a second time. But either way, even just giving your mind a little rest doesn't have to be called meditation. Right now, I do this when I'm having a really busy or hectic day. Whenever I'm driving in the car is when I take my mental break. Now, yes, you might say, okay, but Avery, you're literally doing something already. Like you're driving. It's true. I'm driving. But I think a lot of times when we're driving, we also listen to stuff. We listen to the radio, we listen to a podcast, we listen to an audiobook, we talk on the phone, whatever. I try to have silence in the car. Maybe my windows are down, maybe they're up, but it's silent. And yes, I'm focused on driving, but we all know that some parts of driving don't require such demanding attention, like when you're at a red light, a stop sign, or I don't know, driving through your own neighborhood. Things like that that kind of let your mind wander a little bit. I think it does really help my mind take a break from the noise. So maybe you can try this out if you don't do this already as well. Another idea is a weekly reset. Like every Sunday, you can review your goals, adjust the schedule, and cut out of your schedule what's not serving you. Or also kind of identifying your priorities and then re examining them each week because, sometimes they might change. So, this one might be a good idea as well. And lastly, energy based planning. This is something I definitely do when it comes to filming podcasts just like these, or honestly, just studying too. If I have high energy, I'm going to do the tasks that are better for me to do when I have high energy. So maybe that's studying or recording like this, or even writing my outline for the podcast, whatever I'm doing that might require more energy. And then when I have low energy, I might do slightly less mentally consuming tasks. Like maybe it's an assignment I have for one of my easy classes online, or maybe it's reading an article that I need to read for one of my classes, just something a little bit less demanding on my brain. And this goes a long way because if you're not forcing your brain to do things that it doesn't want to do, and you're taking advantage of the times when your brain is very high energy and ready to go, it really goes a long way. Now, like I mentioned before, when you're in college, you kind of are on a little bit of a routine that was slightly built for you. And especially if you are not working while you're in college, then a lot of your schedule is going to be freed up, and you maybe don't need to plan it out day by day as much because you can kind of fit in everything you need to do for the most part. But the reality of it is when you get out of college and you go get a job, you're going to have a much busier schedule that might require a little bit more time management skills. Things like full-time jobs, bills, relationships, possibly kids someday, depending on whatever you want, and also less structured time than when you're in college. Because if you're in college, you're likely taking classes in person. You might be taking classes online, but even then, some of them are synchronous, so you need to be like on a Zoom call at a certain time. But if you're working, sometimes for online jobs or hybrid jobs, they might have you just get the work done by a certain deadline. And then it's a lot easier to procrastinate. So in college, your schedule is kind of built for you with the classes. But then you also usually have a lot of free time. Like I said, after college, you're going to likely have a job that demands more hours of your time, and usually in person, more than your classes in college. This responsibility is overwhelming, but it can also be very empowering. So, I do want to encourage you guys to learn time management now as an investment for your future self when you are out of college. And if you're listening to this episode right now and you're like, Avery, I'm not even in college, you've been talking about college students this whole time, this can also help you out too. Time management is something that everyone can benefit from, whether you're in high school, college, you're in your full time job, you're in your future career, you have a wife and kids at home, you have a husband and kids at home. It doesn't matter. Time management is always something that you can benefit from. The last thing I do want to touch on is the emotional side of slowing things down, because the truth is that sometimes we are going go, 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 not just because of hustle culture, not just because we need to with our job and our school and everything, but also because sometimes silence can feel a little bit uncomfy. And slowing down does force you to reflect. Like, for example, when I'm in my car driving in silence, is when I come to these realizations, like the realization I came to make this entire episode about the fact that something was going to give, and I couldn't just keep trying to give 100% of every aspect of my life. So, yes, it might be uncomfy, but at the same time, you might come to conclusions about yourself or these realizations about yourself that can be very beneficial. So, I understand that a lot of times it's hard to just sit with ourselves and our own thoughts, but I do want to encourage you guys to try it, to do it. Anyways, I want to remind you guys that you don't need to be everywhere and you don't need to do everything. You just need to decide what your priorities are and what matters most to you, and protect those things and value those things and spend time with those things. If your life feels too fast, maybe it's not a motivation problem, maybe it is a boundary problem. So please take that into consideration as we end this episode and as you go throughout your life, day to day life. It's something to note and catch when things are feeling a little fast. That concludes today's episode. Thank you guys for being here today. Tune in every Thursday to listen or watch on YouTube or Spotify. Or for audio only, I am on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcast, and Audible. Make sure to check out the Instagram or the TikTok at findyourpower_podcast and feel free to DM me there. Thank you guys again so much for tuning in and listening. I appreciate you all for being here. If you enjoyed, please rate the podcast 5 stars on Spotify or Apple. Leave any reviews or comments. And also subscribe to the YouTube channel if you listen on there. It's also Find Your Power Podcast. It really helps the podcast grow. If you have a family member or a friend that you think would benefit from this episode or the whole podcast in general, please send this to them. We don't gatekeep here. They may thank you later for it. And lastly, if you'd like to be featured for an interview or just a conversation on the pod, send me an email at the email linked in the podcast description section or shoot me a DM on the Instagram as well. Thank you guys again. I will talk to you guys next Thursday. And don't forget, we will find your power.